Okay, so we're on step 6 now, evaluating premises on the basis of relevance. And we've come up to example number 3. So I'm going to put a box in here that will hold all my evaluations of the premises. We've got 4 premises in this example. And I'll be evaluating them for relevance, which means I need to look at the diagram to make sure I'm asking the correct questions. For example, in this diagram, premise 2 and 3 independently give evidence for 4. So I wanted to ask whether 2 is relevant to 4 and whether 3 is relevant to 4. Then 4 and 5 are dependent premises giving evidence to 1, so I'm going to ask if the 2 of them are relevant. Now I'm only doing relevance right now, so I'm not going to ask about the acceptability of the premises. In fact, I'm just going to assume that they're acceptable in order to be clear about asking merely about relevance. Okay, let's start at the bottom. 2. The vast majority of serial rapists are also major consumers of pornography. Is that relevant to the claim that pornography makes people into violent criminals? And I'm going to say yes, it is relevant. The fact that so many rapists also consume large amounts of pornography can be used as evidence for the claim that pornography makes people into violent criminals. Because rape is a violent crime, and the correlation allows for the possibility of correlation of pornography use and becoming a violent criminal could be used as evidence for a relationship of causation between the 2 cases. Okay? So it is relevant. That doesn't mean that this argument necessarily works. There may be some other flaws in it, but it passes, in my judgment, it passes the criterion of relevance. 3. These rapists often act out scenes that they have witnessed in pornography videos or texts. Is that relevant to the claim that pornography makes people into violent criminals? I'd say that is relevant. If criminals are acting out scenarios that they have witnessed in pornography, it stands to reason that they may not have acted out those particular scenarios if they had not viewed the pornography. Therefore, it's possible that the pornography caused in some way their violent crime. Now, 4 and 5 are dependent premises. They're linked, so I have to ask about their relevance together. So I just assume that these claims are acceptable to ask whether they are relevant. Pornography makes people into violent criminals. Anything that makes people into violent criminals ought to be banned. And I would say yes, these 2 are relevant. Premise 4 describes a certain characteristic of pornography. And premise 5 says that anything that has that particular characteristic ought to be banned. Since the conclusion claims that pornography ought to be banned, these 2 premises are relevant to that claim. Look how I haven't repeated the premises because I've described more what they're doing. What does premise 4 do? It describes a certain characteristic. Premise 5 says that anything that has that particular characteristic ought to be banned. And the conclusion is that pornography ought to be banned. So this argument passes every premise, in my judgment, and there's room for disagreement on at least some of these. In my judgment, all of these premises are relevant to the claims that they are supposed to be giving evidence for.